sort of a general plan. Basically, what I want to attempt to do is to show you how I try to use the computer as both a teaching tool and as a learning tool. And what I'm going to do with each of my sessions is basically, we're going to work through a session, work through a tutorial that I would use in class. Now, I've given you a copy of all three of them. You are what color group? You are red. So we are obviously going to do the pink one. Okay, when the other two groups come, then we will do the blue and the green one. So this way you have a copy of the lesson that we're going to do with all the sessions, but we're just going to do the pink one today, this morning. The basic flow of what I try to do when I have the students use the computer or do activity-oriented things, and the ones I'm doing here are different styles, different quantities of things of the computer use. But basically the flow is we start out small. Very often we start with one. We provide our own information. Then we go to a small sample. It might be sharing, everybody in the classroom sharing together to create a sample of size 25 or 28, whatever happens to be in class that day. Or it might be 4 people that sit next to each other, form a sample of 4 and collect their data together. And then we build to a bigger group. Then we try to go to multiple samples. And then very often we go to the computer and have the computer do 100 of that, whatever it was we did for us. Very often with simulation, I find that that's absolutely necessary. Because if you just go right to the computer and start doing simulation, let's say with a central limit theorem, draw 100 samples of size 10, you lost them right away because they don't know what's going on. I mean, you got a magic show then. And so when I do that kind of a thing, we start and we do one sample, we do all the calculations with it, then we do another sample, or we build on it so that we try to make sure that they keep track of everything as they go along. Now, the lesson that we're going to do in here this morning for this session is basically an entirely generated data, randomly generated data by the computer. We will use that data. We're going to try to attempt to answer the question that it seems like, I think my wife asks me more often than anybody else. My wife is a great reader of especially medical and health news. And they're always coming up with such and such as a result of this sample of 55 patients or 300 patients or 24 patients was all they used in this sample. And she's always saying, how can they be so sure that what they're telling you is right if they only had 24 patients involved in that study? And of course, students are always asking the same kind of question. You know, if you got a population of several million, how is it a sample of 30 data can tell you what you need to know? And so this particular lesson is designed to attempt to answer that. How did I title it? What 30 can tell you about millions or thousands or whatever the number is that's there. So the game plan here in this lesson is we're going to have the computer generate a huge sample. In this case, I think it's 5,000. We're going to calculate some basic statistics of that set of 5,000 data. We're going to draw its histogram. Then we're going to go back and we're going to draw a sample of 30. And see if we can learn the same information from the 30 that we learned from the 5,000. Well, clearly, if the 30 tell us the same thing as 5,000 did, then 30, whatever we're testing, is enough. We don't have to test 5,000. And we're going to then do it once. Then we'll do it several times over again with the aid of the computer very quickly and try to see that regardless of which sample you have, the first one, the second one, the third one, the 10th one, that basically the sample of 30 has given us almost the same information all the time. Now by doing this early, of course, I'm doing it for the intent of convincing them that a sample is enough information, if in fact it's a random sample. Trying to convince them that random is important. And we're also kind of laying the groundwork for the concept of what a sampling distribution is. The ability to read a histogram and know that if data is normal, that it doesn't always turn out to have a histogram that's absolutely perfectly normally shaped. that if there's one bar that's one class of the histogram in between that's down low, that doesn't immediately make it binomial or bimodal. You know, things of that nature. So there's lots of little things built into this activity. Then typically what I do with my students is we get it started in class. Whatever they get done in class, they get done. After class, they finish it, they write it up, and these kinds of activities then turn into a report. And one of the things that I propose that we could do, and this is the case with this one, you have a written copy of this. It's on the hard drive. So what the student is going to do when they get ready to do their report, well, while they're doing this, they write hand notes. There's going to be questions that says, what do you see? Write some notes. You don't have to write the whole thing and answer in class. But after class, when they do the part that's going to be turned in, they pull this thing up on disk, off the disk, into Word or whatever word processor they're using. So they've already got all the questions, all the things typed. Now they go in, they copy and paste graphs in or whatever statistics that we want pulled over from Minicam. They type in their answers and so on, and now they have a finished report. And I can even read it. I don't know about your students, but I don't think any of mine ever passed penmanship. So I like it since my reports are typed, and so I've gotten to a point where absolutely everything has to come off the computer if it's turned in, except our exams. I think that's the only thing I accept anymore that doesn't come off a word processor. So that's the kind of game plan that I use. I don't use all my classes this way, obviously, but the ones that I do this kind of thing, that's the general plan, and that's what I want to try to run you through. So basically at this point, what we're going to do is everybody is just going to start doing the tutorial. I will talk to you occasionally and give you some general guidance. I will walk around and help you individually. Kim is going to sit at the instructor's station and we'll be doing it, and hers will be projected. So if you have not, how many are familiar, maybe I should start that way, how many are familiar with using things like Windows? So you're basically familiar with things like point and click, using the pull-down menus and stuff? That's entirely the way this thing is. This is all in Minicam. But if you don't know anything about Minicam, you can still do this. If you use a word processor on Windows, the file command is still the same, copy and paste is still the same, everything works in Minicam just like it does in Word or Write or WordPerfect or anything else as far as those kinds of activities are concerned. Okay? So, let's begin. You start by, down in the lower left-hand corner of the Program Manager, you will find an icon labeled Mathematics. If you will point at that and double-click. There's one up here that's active. I thought yesterday that we had everyone in here functioning. No, you don't have a... this machine booted yesterday and functioned yesterday. I don't know.
I rebuilt it this one over here, so.
Just turn it off, start it again?
No, this one's how to fix it. You can try that, but this one's how to fix it. This one works.
The only one that wasn't working yesterday was that one with the mouse, and the mouse would only move vertically for some reason.
Do we have any other stations open?
Put that over there.
Is this one open here? There's two down here in the corner. This one didn't boot either. These two both booted too. Don't put your disk in at this point. We're on a network that if you put your disk in, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to run the virus scan, and that'll tie everything up for a few extra minutes. It's unnecessary. So if you double-click on the mathematics window or icon, you should get a mathematics window pop up. Just point and double-click on the Minicam icon, and then Minicam should open it for you. Does everybody have something that started? The next, I got a window here that says click on the bottom one, continue without the disk. That turquoise one, continue without a disk. That's okay. That's all right. That's a standard default. Click OK. Yes or okay. Just go. No. Just click on the bottom bar that says continue without the disk. We won't put the disk in until you need it. Okay? If you put the disk in now, it's going to go through a whole virus scan and stuff, and I think we can avoid that. You've got a brand new disk. So it shouldn't really need to, see the bottom, one? Did everybody find that okay? If you're having trouble, you gotta raise your hand so I can see who needs help. Did you put that in?
It just takes a while.
It just takes a while. Remember I said these are squirrel power? There it goes. Just be patient with it because they're not, these are not Pentiums and they do not fly. Maybe we should stay together for the first few steps. Okay? So when you get a Minicam window, the top half is clear, says session window, the bottom half says data. Just stay put for a minute. That means you're on to the Minicam worksheet. This one's going now. Okay, is everybody on, anybody who's not on the Minicam window at this point? Okay, let's go to the first command. The first command is step number 1. Now what we're going to do first is we're going to generate this huge sample of 5,000 data. So up on your menu bar, across the top, it says File, Edit, Manip, and Calc. Click on, point and click on Calc, and you'll get a pull-down window, a pull-down screen. On that pull-down screen, click on the word data, random data. It's down toward the bottom. And random data will give you another pull-down. Go over and click on normal. Now these instructions are written, I think, using typical thing. Across the top there with the arrow in it, it's click on calculate, followed by, click on random data, followed by, click on normal. Now we should have a dialog window. In this dialog window, we've got to enter a bunch of information. And so right under that series, it says enter. Now find where it says, now make sure the little blinking cursor is where the word generate is. If it is, type the number 1 for 5,000. If you're using the keypad on the left, make sure you put the number lock on. I'm sorry, keypad on the right. If you use that, use the one across the top, you're all set. Now, as soon as you've entered that, press the tab key, and it will jump to the next window. Now, if you don't want to use the tab key, you can point and click at the next window. That's okay. So we're at Store In, type C1. Upper or lowercase does not make any difference. Minicam doesn't make any difference. The typical convention is when you are doing session commands, we usually put bold for the first 4 letters because they're required. But basically, in this case, we're not using the session commands, we're using the menu commands to do it. Is everybody with me? Okay? Anybody who's not with me at this point? Because I don't want to lose you on the first station here. No. You're already generating random. We're right here. The word generated, number 5,000. Everything that you do is in bold. You either point at it and click on it, or you enter it. It's in bold print on your paper. That's how I tried to highlight this, okay? So you have stored, hit tab, and it will go down to mean. We want this set of data to have a mean of 100, so type in the number 100. Notice it's blue, just like in a word processor. If it's blue, the next thing replaces all of it, right? So you don't have to delete it first. Hit tab again, and we go to standard deviation, and we want the standard deviation to be 20. And now I've got arrow OK. That means followed by OK. So go down and click on OK. And now the computer should generate us in column 1 on your data worksheet 5,000 numbers that have an approximately normal distribution with a standard deviation of 20. Now, you want to see them? Okay, let's go take a look at them. Take your pointer and click anywhere on column 1 on the data page. Click right on top of any of the data. Just click once so that it's active. Press the End key. Find END up on the top right-hand side of your keyboard. There's a home and an end key. Find End. Press it, and it will take you to row 5,000 of them. Okay? If you press home, it will go back up to row number 1. So there's 5,000 numbers on our data sheet. Okay? Now what the heck do these 5,000 numbers look like? What do we want to do with them? You want to describe them, right? Okay? Let's start by drawing a histogram. Are you with me here? Click on OK. And they come off with all NAs while it's generating it, and then they'll flash the numbers in just about now. Not quite. Okay? Now, we're ready to do a histogram. So the commands are, up on the menu bar, find graph, followed by click on histogram, and up will pop a dialog window. So fill in. Now I'll go through this dialog window. This is a little more complicated than the other one. Okay? Now, it should come up blinking in X, right? Now over on the left-hand side, you have a window which lists all the columns on the worksheet that have information in them. We didn't put a name on it. Go over and double-click on that C1. Double-click on it, and it should enter it next to the X, where the cursor was blinking. If it doesn't, do it again. Or, if you're having trouble with it, click on it once, and down underneath you'll see a box that says, a button that says select. Click on it once and hit select if your double click timing isn't perfect. Now I tell you that, let me take time out here to tell you something, because this gentleman, I can't think of your name. Yes? Nelson? Nasser. Nasser, right. You're from Iowa. Good country out there. I want you to do me one favor though. When you go home, you tell them you could not see the Empire State Building from here, okay? I did my graduate work out there, and all those people think that upstate New York is in the shadow of the Empire State Building. Honest to God, they all do. Anyhow, the reason I want you to click on that to bring it across, some of the other functions, and we may in this lesson or not, but in some of the others, if you go back and do them at some point, if you just type the thing in there, you'll get an error message. Sometimes Minicam wants a single quote on that when it comes across into the dialog box. And there's no pattern that I've been able to figure out for that. So the safe way is to always enter it by clicking, and then it always enters it the way Minicam wants it. Okay? But we learned that last fall. We had a session. I was having kids type it in, C1, or type the name of the variable in, and all of a sudden we started with a couple commands, and I think it was in my Stat 2 class, so I don't think it's the simpler problem. I think what it is different ones of these routines were programmed by different software writers, you know, and they each had their own little idiosyncrasies with some of these things, and I think this one has not been worked out yet. But that's what it is. That's why I would like you to enter it by clicking. Okay, now, we're going to print some of these histograms, or you have that option if you wish. And when we start printing them, they're all going to look alike unless you put some things on that aren't. So I think what I've done here is no, I'm sorry, that's later. I'll show it to you right now though, okay? Go down to, let's enter the information first. Select the work down on the button Options. We're going to control the kinds of things that the style histogram that this does. By clicking on Options, select frequency, it is already selected. Type of interval, select cut points. That simply means you're telling it what you want for class boundaries. Then go down and click on the next line, the next block, click on midpoint class cut points positions. Okay, everybody find that all right? Now go over and click in the box right beside it so that the active cursor is right here. And now type 20:180/5. Now what that says is we want the smallest class boundary to be 20, the maximum class boundary to be 180, and we want it to do classes of 5 units wide in between. Okay? At this point, click on OK. And we come back to the main histogram dialog window. Now down along the bottom you'll find a thing called Annotations. Okay? Now this is not on your pink sheet. It's somewhere else on your pink sheet, but let's do it now. Down at Annotations, click on Annotations, and the first thing you'll see is Title. Click on Title. Okay, click on Class Cut Point, then you gotta click in this box. Now enter the 20. You gotta click in the box. You gotta click it, always the cursor's gotta be in the little window where you're going to enter information. Okay? Type your title right here. Just put 5,000 data or something. Okay? Click OK. Leave it there for a second, Cam.
But,
Oh, you did already, okay.
sorry.
All right? Now go to Annotations again, only this time click on Annotations a second time. This time click on Footnote and type your name in the line. This way, if you do print it and it comes off, it'll have your name and you know exactly which one was yours. Okay? Followed by OK. Followed by another OK when you're back on the histogram one. And Minicam now should draw you a histogram of all that data. Okay here? Okay, click on that, click on mid, yes, click on the button in front first. Now click in the box and enter those numbers. How are we doing over here? Okay? Okay? It's under Annotations. Okay? Anything that has to do with annotating, labeling it, decorating it, is an annotation. That's you'll see it when your histogram comes up. It's the lowest class boundary of the first class up to the upper class boundary of the last class by 5s. So it's from 20 to 180 by 5s.
You could also choose the number of visits.
You could do anything, there's all kinds of combinations you could do with it. I put a lot of them in here because we got lots of data so that you can really see how close to normal the stuff is. How are we coming? I told you this was squirrel-powered computer. We would have all had histograms by now upstairs, unless the system would have crashed on us by now, which is probably the likely scenario. It's doing it. It takes a while. It's a squirrel. Maybe it's only a chipmunk. I don't know. Beg pardon? Where are you at? Let me borrow your button for a minute. Did you do the options? You got the options? Did you do the annotations?
I'm doing
Okay,
it.
so then you gotta click on this OK to get it to do it. Specify some sort of option.
I had to wait for the
This shouldn't have anything to do with it. If you convert this, it's here. It's not there. You got me. Everything is set up perfect. You want to jump over to a different one?
Did you lose yours?
This is the other thing about computer classrooms. Mr. Murphy is in here somewhere today. You know, and if it can go wrong, it will, and it's trying. Just wait. Yeah, you'll have a sort of an iron cross, or you'll have a little hourglass, depending on where your cursor happens to be.
That's not a little hourglass.
That's his weight. It stopped right in the middle of the command. Great. It's
Do you have
working.
your hourglass?
It's working. Be patient. Some of us are lucky to have our histograms already. It's coming. It's just slow, folks. Be patient. Don't hit a bunch of buttons while you're waiting. There comes Kim. So look on the board and you'll see what you're supposed to get eventually. Oh, she's already got hers. Where did it get the numbers come from? Okay so far? Are we having fun yet? There you go. Okay? Now, before we go any further, let's get rid of this rascal over here. Just delete that kid. Come on, let's go. Okay, that way you'll be going from 4,999 or something. Actually, it's dropped down more than that, hasn't it? Okay. Click back up on the other one. Does everybody have a histogram yet? Still waiting on a couple. Okay. At this point, there's a question here. Inspect your histogram. Does it seem to be normally distributed? Yes or no? Write in your paragraph. I'm a great believer in writing across the curriculum. Dave mentioned it earlier upstairs. And I make my students write paragraphs. It's gotten to the point it's 25 plus, 50 plus, 100 plus, however many words I want. And at the beginning of the semester, oh my God, is it painful. Oh, they can't write. They never had to write a sentence about a math course before in their life. And it's like they never had to write a sentence anywhere in their life before. And I'm kidding, it's not big. I do not grade sentences and paragraphs the first part of the semester. I just look at them and count the words. And kid, if it said 25 plus and you gave me 15 words, do it over again. Honest to God, I do not grade. I do not read paragraphs the first half of the semester. But you know what I found? That by the second half of the semester, like you got 3 weeks left to go in the semester, you start reading those paragraphs, they actually can write statistics. They can actually talk about a graph. They can actually use the word mean or standard deviation, and most of the time, they use it correctly. But it's just like anything else. I used to coach basketball. If I never had basketball practice, when Friday night came, I couldn't expect my team to go out there and look like something and win a game. We had to practice all week. It's the same darn thing. And so I just make them write me paragraphs. And write paragraphs. And write paragraphs. Explaining. I usually try to change the question from one thing to the next. So I kind of focus on a certain thing each different time or something. But I just make them write. And like I said, they rebel early. And if you give in early, you're lost. You absolutely have to be a SOB for half the semester, and then they get the point, and then they do it, and they play your game. And usually at the end of the semester, I'll get comments like, you know, I finally really learned, I finally really understood, I really did it, I liked statistics when it was all done. You know, those are the common comments for those who played the game with me. Those who continue to refuse, they still don't learn. And I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, whether you have them write paragraphs or not. So anyhow, that's what would happen there. Now, do we have histograms everywhere at this point? Okay. Not yet? Kick that. Quit kicking that squirrel. He's fighting back. Let's move on to the next page. Let's get some other statistics about this particular set of data. So go up to the main menu bar at the top and click on Stat. Under that pull down, the second one down is Basic Statistics. Go over to Describe Statistics and click, and you should get a Describe window. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, we're going to leave a step out here. Because if we don't, we will spend the next 5 minutes waiting for another histogram. Probably 10 minutes, because this histogram takes longer than the first one. Penalty for working ahead. Huh?
Worse than that, I tried some tongue the thing.
You did it already.
I tried the second one and tongue.
It's done?
I had tongue, I had to
Oh, it hung up. So just enter C1 as the variable.
Still highlight and click again?
Double click on the C1 to enter the variable, and click OK. That's all. Just that much. Click on OK. And up should come a whole list of basic statistics. Mean, median, mode, number of data, standard deviation, max, mins, quartiles, just a listing of things, okay? So this is our population. This is this huge set of 50 or 5,000 data. There are some basic things about it. Now I asked him to write another paragraph, we'll skip that at this point. Now we're gonna go to part B and we're gonna find out about a sample. So now what we want to do is we want to randomly draw a sample of 30 from that set of 5,000. Minicam will do that using the commands down in step 4A. Okay? Can you read the commands at this point? Go to menu command, calc, random data, and sample from columns. I believe that's the top one. Top entry on that last pull down is sample from columns. Okay? Now we want 30. It says sample 30 rows. Okay? Hit the tab key. Enter column 1. We're going to store them in column 2. So hit the tab and go to store samples in count C2. Now, an interesting thing here with Minicam. Kim, hit the backspace. I would have Kim show you. You don't have to do it. If you had C2 there, just leave it. But here's an interesting feature with Minicam. Type a single quote and then put data. Just close the single quote. Now, what Minicam does with this is it names the next available column data. Now the next open column on the worksheet is column 2. So not only is it going to put the data in column 2, but it's going to put a name of the variable up at the top. So it's a very convenient feature there. But you always have to use single quotes to do it. Your choice. Use it or not. Doesn't matter. Same things are going to happen except the column won't be labeled if you don't. Okay? Hit enter. Or okay. Oh, okay. You've been through all this Minicam stuff, right?
I did dot plot.
Oh, well, yeah, dot plot works quicker. It's a character graph. Okay. Go ahead, hit. You got her. Okay. Yes. Choose sample. Was it sample with replacement chosen? Oh, okay. You needed to choose that. I'm sorry. I looked away and was talking with Kevin and forgot it. Okay. Technically, when you have a fixed population, to make it a random sample, you need replacement. Technically, by the definition. With 5,000, it probably wouldn't affect the results with this, but okay. And now, if you want to check your sample, you can look in column 2, the same as we did before. Click anywhere on column 2, hit end, E-N-D, and you'll go down to, and you'll see there are 30 data. Hit the down arrow if you wish, and go down and make sure there's nothing beyond that. Okay, you can see the 30 blank, row 31 is all blank. And as soon as you find one blank with a Minicam, they're all blank after that. Okay? Now, draw a histogram of those 30. So go graph histogram. What was the question? He goes calculate. We wanted random data. The commands are right here. Go, random data. No. Only thing I skipped was one line here, that graph line. Just didn't want you to select graph. Sample from, that's what you want. Put down the blue one up there. Sample from the columns. We want to take a sample from that column. Now here's your stuff. Here's your enter 30. Hit tab. Now when you go to your histogram this time, because we put a title on it before, you may want to change the title. So go to the only thing you'll need to change is title. Leave everything else alone. Just go down to annotation, bring up title.
C2.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you need to change it to C2. I'm sorry. You need to change the variable X, and you need to change the annotation title. Because now you want the title to say sample or something like that. You don't want it to say 5,000 data anymore. So type sample in there and hit your OKs. I'll take it back. We better do one other thing while we're in here. We better go into options. Just click on options. And let's change the 5 in that last entry. Because if we have the class width of only 5, we've got 30 data spread across way too many classes. Now, we had a standard deviation of what, 20? I'd make that 5 a 10. Or even make it a 20. Either change the 5 to a 10 or change it to a 20. Either way.
Which do you want?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Then click OK, and then click OK again.
I'm sorry, what did you change?
Under Options, change the file, the very last entry. Just click on it, or no, just hit the backspace arrow. And either enter a 10 or a 20. Either one, it doesn't matter. One's a half a standard deviation, one's a whole standard deviation. Now hit, okay. Now under Annotations,
Just
change the
fix that
title.
computer by sticking these in.
You did that one already? Okay, just click on
Okay,
OK.
thank you.
You did, okay. Click OK, and then click OK again.
Yeah, he's gonna be here.
Okay, you're here, right? Click on, click on OK. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute, click on OK there again. You didn't enter, see where the thing blinking up there? You gotta enter that C1. Double click on C1. Gotta have a variable. That's what it's saying. Now click on OK. And now you see that pop up in the back? Okay. Now go ahead to calculate. I'm sorry.
Suzanne, do you have it?
Basic statistics. Describe. Change that to C, go over to C like it is, go over and double click on C2. Okay. And now you'll get the statistics for that. Now what I want you to do is to compare them. Kim got up for a second, so I'm going to steal her chair. If you'll look, let me show you something. Here's how you can very quickly build tables so you can compare. You don't need to do this. Just let me show you because I want you to see what you can do with your students. Okay, now back up here. Where did that rascal come from? Get out of there. Okay, if we scroll back up on the session window, back up here somewheres, we had, here's the data for our 1,000 pieces of data, or 5,000 data. We really don't, at this point, know what standard error of the mean is. So highlight it, and I'm going to chop it right out of there. Take its number out. Okay, now I'm going to bring these, actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, just like what you would do with Word or any word processor, I can chop these things out and pull them over. I'm going to, this time I'm going to copy, just like in a word processor, Control C, go up here, Control V for paste, and then I'm going to chop all this other stuff out and wrap it around. And now I've got, there's the basic statistics for my 5,000 data, right? Now, I'm going down here. Oh, you haven't done your sample yet. I thought your sample was done. I'll get them. We need C there. That's all we need. There's our sample, okay? So now, if I do the same thing here, actually I don't need any of this stuff. I'm going to take that whole row out. Oop, that's okay. Come on, Junior. There's what I want. Now, which one was standard error? It was the next to the last one, wasn't it? It's this guy. I'm going to chop him out. I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff. Now, I can copy this whole block. Probably what I would have done in class is I would have done it the other way around. This 30 gave me 106. The median was 99.7, the median was 107. Mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, quartiles. Now I'll tell you what, I've run this little program in developing this thing. I probably ran this thing 50 times. and that's about as far off as I've ever seen them. They usually come within about 2 on everything except min, max, and the quartiles. All those first ones, mean, median, trim mean, and standard deviation, they are almost always within 2. So now we have them do it over again and over again. Okay, now I realize our time is getting very close. So rather than doing it here, let me show you the trick for doing it multiple times. You want to do it or you want me to show them? Okay. Here's what you do to show it multiple times. I was sure we would have more time than this, and it doesn't work out. Okay, now, we just did the sample. Can you see where I got my pointer moving across here? We just drew a sample of 30, right? And we drew a histogram, and we described it. We calculated all those statistics. I'm going to avoid the histogram. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to use copy and paste techniques, just like you would use in a word processor. I'm going to copy the things out I want and build a little package, I'll call it. It's identified on there exactly what rows you want. If you'd been following them, they would all be right in a block. And if you had time to do the histogram, it would be right in there with it, okay? But I don't want to take the time. So I'm going to draw a sample of 30. So I'm going to copy that line out, and I'm going to put it down here. I also want to do the descriptive statistics. So I'm going to copy that line out and put it down here. Now these are the only 2 commands I want to do. I want to do them over and over and over again to just see what happens. So now as a block I copy them. Now to get to the cursor, the prompt, the MTB prompt to insert it, you have to get down to that red active MTB prompt, the Minicam prompt. Control-END takes you automatically to it. Paste them in, hit enter. And now it will do both of those commands, one right after the other, hopefully. Come on, Junior. Don't make a liar out of me at this point. I didn't look to see what I pasted in there. Did I get the right? There they are. Then I tell the students, okay, trim it down so you've got that one line. You want it ready to do it again? Control-V, enter, and now you got another sample of 30. If you had the histogram in there, it would do the histogram every time and bring up the statistics. You ready for another one? Control-V, and there it comes again. And you can do this over and over again. They see the histogram, sample 30, sample 30, sample 30. They begin to see, yes, it changes, but if you stand arm's length from it, it looks the same every time, or almost the same every time. So now, what do you do for a homework assignment? What do you do for projects? Suppose I have this row do sample size 20. This row do sample size 40. This row do sample size 10. Do it as a project, do it as a homework, do it any combination you want to. The commands are all there. You relive it. Give each one a different sample size than 30. Have them write it up as their own paper afterwards. You can get them involved. And to me, that's the scenario I believe in. You tell them what's expected of them. You outright demand it. You say, that's it. This is it. This is what I expect. This is what you'll do. That's why I say the counting of the words. If I tell them 25 and they write 15, it comes back and they got to do it again. Same thing with these. The assignment has to come off the computer. It will come off the computer. When you start using it and they start feeling comfortable with it, your papers will look better. All kinds of things can happen. Okay? Now, I don't know where everybody in here is at their institution, because we're probably all in different places. I think we happen to be fairly fortunate here in that we have a pretty good computer situation on board. I want to show you I mentioned earlier about the tours in the labs, the open labs. If you go into one of these things, I have a lesson that Pat Kuby and I wrote for our classes this last year, where we did a 1-hour credit course for just learning to function with Minicam. And one of the lessons was go to a graph like this and edit it. All you got to do in here, this is where kids get hooked on this. You go on this active graph and you double click and you get a toolbar. You want to draw a line, you draw a circle around something out there, you just go over there and, come on Junior, did I lose it? No. I was going faster than the squirrel will go. Okay, and you can draw a circle on it. It didn't end up where I thought it was, but that was because of my impatience. You want the circle red, you tell it red. You want the line around it to be a different size. Oop, I put the wrong button. You make it a different size. You want to be able to see through it to see what's underneath it. This one down here is the area. You make it window glass so you can see through it. We have a little lesson that shows you, I think, like 19 or 20 different little editing features of things you can do to graphs once that they have been created. And this is where you hook them, folks. I have found that if the kids have been fighting me with the computers and using, I'm not learning anything new and all this kind of stuff, this one got them. Now all of a sudden they're spending more time with their statistics homework. I feel bad for their English class, but not that bad. Okay? But that's also available in the open labs later. I guess I'll ask a couple questions and then we probably better get out of here very shortly.
Do you teach your statistics classes in a room like this?
I teach in this room. Yes. I teach across the hall in a room more often because it has 6 more seats. This one isn't big enough for a stat class. This one has 24 or 5 seats in it.
So do you use the computer every day?
In some of my stat classes, yes, I do. Now, some days, I we qualify it. We meet in the stat classroom every day. Some days we do not turn the computer on. We probably are on the computer 2 days a week. Some of those 2 days we're only on for 10 minutes. Some days we're on for the whole period. So it kind of comes and goes, you know. But scheduling is tough to plan it to be in there on the day you want. So if you want to be there the day you want, the half a class period you want, you almost have to take occupancy for the whole semester. Yeah. Unless you can coordinate. If Kim and I were both teaching stat, but we'd have different hours and we couldn't work unless the classes were doubled up the same hour. But that's the kind of activity I like to use with the computer.
I was wondering, this situation, what you just did, using different sample sizes, getting almost similar results. The message remains that sample size is important, but by pure chance, you may get the same thing. Is that?
Well, the message I think is twofold. Randomness helps you. Okay? Randomness helps you balance it out. But you start getting down to sample size 20, and you will get some different results. Now, here we started with a perfectly normal distribution. In this packet you'll find in the back I make up some goofy ones. I give you the instructions to put together 2 normal distributions with different means, different standard deviations. So you get a bimodal distribution. Now when you draw samples of size 30, your histogram looks very much like that population of 5,000 with the 2 humps in it. But when you draw samples of size 10, you may get all 10 out of one mode, or 9 of them and 1 of them. And so when you get down to small sample sizes, when you have an unusual distribution, 10, 15 data is not enough to tell you what the 5,000 look like. And that's the other project I quickly mentioned, that I didn't mention, is to give them populations or generate rectangular ones, J-shaped ones, or using the exponential function, for example, or some other function, so that the 5,000 that they're trying to describe has some very distinctive characteristics. And then see if these sample sizes show it up. With normal, it kind of balances out, and 20 does a pretty good job. 10 doesn't do such a good job. But if you go something that's a little goofy meaning non-normal, I suppose is the way I should say it, then it takes 30 to be a pretty consistent indicator. And you can convince them of that just by this repeated simulation. Remember when you get the inference, I mean, what's the underlying assumption is that it's normal, but once you get to 30, takes over and pretty well doesn't matter what it is. Well, T is really very robust. And let's see, which one is that? That's the blue lesson. Talking about that kind of thing is about the robustness and the power of T in some of those situations. Is that underlying assumption necessary? Well, yes, it's necessary, but what if you violate it? How much trouble do you get in by violating? You can almost simplify. I always believed that. I've done, like you probably have, all those moment generating function theorems and stuff in math stat and stuff. You know, I could do the calculus, but it never proved anything to me. But once I started simulating some of those things, and you could see how important that was, again, T turns out to be very robust, so no matter what you do, it works pretty darn good. You want to see one that doesn't work? Try the chi-square test for variance. It'll blow up in your face as soon as you lose normality. It's not even trustworthy with normal samples. Or I should say samples from normal populations. It's barely trustworthy. I mean, I would have never thought that. I mean, I read that, I kind of thought, you know, I believed it, but you demonstrate it with this kind of a simulation and you'll become a true believer very quickly. And you can convince your kids of how important it is. But that's in the, like I said, the blue lesson. Okay, so some of that's in there.
Do you think it's important to start from a real world problem?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. This kind of a thing, this kind of a thing where I was trying to justify using 30, I wouldn't want to try to go out and collect 5,000 data just to have a huge, or even 1,000 to draw from. That just seems like too much work. The point doesn't need, to me, the point doesn't need real data to convince me that 30 is a big enough sample to tell me the same story that that big group did.
Maybe if you ask them the amount of money they spend every week
Yeah.
eating, they find it more interesting and they get more hooked in it.
Now, the green lesson starts with actual student data. So I have big sets of data that we do some others on. So it kind of depends on what it is I'm doing, what the point of it is. If simulation will work, it's quicker usually, except with our squirrel.
And it's better to let them build the simulation themselves, I think.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. We bypassed it very quickly, but we generated the big set, we drew one. We did the things for it by itself. Then we went back and we did that one repeatedly to see over and over again what it did. Then what was planned to do was to go back and change the populations to a different shape, shouldn't call it a population, a different huge sample, and do it over again, or go back and do the original with different sample sizes. That's the game plan. And once you've done the whole package or signed a combination of them, this is where reports come in. If you're one of those who like to do oral reports, you could do a combination of like 6 different things there and have 6 different groups give a 5-minute report or hand out a short report of what they found. So depending on what you want to do and so on. But I find my students like those things. And I think that's kind of what Dr. Moore was saying earlier was, you get them involved. If you don't get them involved, I don't get anything out of it. They can rotely remember what a mean is and how to calculate it, but I'm not sure that's terribly important. That to me always was a 3rd or 4th grade problem. Yeah, here's 10 numbers, find the mean. Doesn't do much for me for statistics or thinking. Any other questions?
Is Minicam the best software?
Depends on who you're talking to. I like Minicam because I think Minicam, for the things that it will do for you, is the simplest one for students to learn to use. You don't have to know an awful lot about anything except basic word processing. And if you know you want to draw a histogram, you look at this thing, where are you going to find a histogram? You don't remember the command, there's only one on there that sounds right, graph. You pull the graph menu, a histogram, right there it is. There's very few commands in here that are hidden that you can't find. As long as you're sure that this is a statistical package and confident that it does most things, I suspect you could sit down and find it here. And that's the thing I like. Now, Excel, has some marvelous things. Jump In has some marvelous things. There's lots of other products. I looked at a product and reviewed a product called StataQuest a year ago that really looks nice. Its intent, for example, is to be something that is fairly inexpensive. They could package it with a textbook for like $5 or $6. And they would have the entire package for $5 or $6. They wouldn't have to go buy a Minicam for $100. Site license is a huge, this version that's on here, it costs your student price, that's a $900 package. Okay, site licenses get very expensive. Our site license around here is around $5,000 a year. I mean, it's a tremendous expense. And there are other ways to go. So you got, all those factors to answer your question, which one is best. For teaching beginning level, I think given all other factors, I would probably continue to use a Minicam. But
I just started looking at the demo list for active stats, which David Moore briefly showed us. And we compressed this coming out, and I'm a high school teacher, so I might be more on these things than
You're Glenn.
Right.
I haven't gotten to catch up with you yet.
Yeah. Though, we bought Minicam at our high school. We didn't use it very much because it's really hard to use. It's what professional statisticians use. We're looking for stuff that teaches statistics, which Active Stats does, and some stuff that other people are going to develop now. So, have you had a chance to look at something like Active Stats?
I have not seen Active Stat yet.
Because this, you have to sort of, the teacher, have to know what you want the kids to do on this and write the lesson plans and stuff.
That was amazing, the stuff he saw. He was showing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I mean, I just looked at introduction and this is pretty impressive stuff, this Active Stats.
Now, my only comeback to that is, with the experience I've had with students, is I would be afraid that the students would say, I don't know enough to use that computer package. It may be at that level, but I don't feel comfortable enough to go in and do it. Whereas they say, well, gee, I've got this problem. You see, they're more, what did he call them? There were basically the formulas, the rules, and the concepts. Okay? Students are rules oriented. They want, do this, get this as an answer. They don't want to have to understand concepts. At least that's my experience with most of them. And so that kind of a system, I'm afraid, would be totally frustrating to, I think, most students. Where Minicam is, you want the mean, here's the mean. You want the standard deviation, here's the standard deviation. Minicam does not help teach concepts, you're right. Minicam gets answers. Minicam is more of a tool. I think what he was showing is something that works marvelous as a teaching thing, but I'm not sure how the weak student who has no math background, very little math background, low motivation for taking statistics. I don't know about around your school or on your other campuses, but around here, you'd think statistics was the hardest course on campus sometimes. To me, it's the only course on campus that everybody should be taking, and it should be fun for everybody, because it's life. But, so I guess it depends. And SAS has come up with this thing called Jump In. And Jump In is very interactive and very interesting. But Jump In is sophisticated. And I don't think most of the students I see are ready for that level of. I described it the other day to one of my colleagues who's a Mac user. I said, you would like Jump In, because Jump In, to me, is organized with the same mental set as someone who likes Mac. They work that way. To me, there's something different about the mental set of the organization for the way things are done on Mac and the way they're done on PC. They're becoming closer together, but I think there's an organizational difference originally that's to me, is a little different. I have to rethink my head, make my head think a little different when I'm working on Mac. And this SAS product is that way. And I think it's I think it's going to become a popular product, but probably for junior on up level college people. That's my best guess. But I thought it was a very interesting product, and I thought people ought to see it. So. We got to run, or we're going to miss lunch. I don't know about you, but I'm hungry.
What do we have to do to shut down?
What you need to do here to shut down, you want to save anything? If you don't want to save anything, simply go up to File and go clear to the bottom of that pull down to one that says Restart Minicam. And what that will do is, in a matter of a few seconds, it will reboot Minicam. It'll clear out absolutely everything you did, reset all the defaults, so when the next group comes in next hour, it's already set to go. So you don't have to go out and come back in kind of thing. Now, you'll get a couple of dialogues along the way, just check no. And you did that, those are all saved. It'll just close everything up and it'll go back to a blank page, the same page you saw to start with for Minicam. You don't have to click anymore. It's just like two no's and it should go.
Leave the machine turned on.
And computers, it's like 5 minutes.
Okay, leave it right there.
Leave the machine.
Leave it running. Leave it running, that way we're set for the next group.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to take you to the lunch, which is at the terrace. We're already on the first floor, so we just need to follow the first floor to a different building.
And if you need a restroom stop, about 2/3 of the way over there, there's a men's and a women's restroom, and the stairs that go up to the terrace are
On the way.
20 feet away. So you will find it without any problem. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
I do not feel comfortable the way these things work today. That too in this classroom. Or across the hall in 104, which is a computer classroom just like this, except it has 6 extra student stations. We do not use the computer every single day. We probably use the computer twice a week out of 3 classes. Some days we use it for 10 minutes. Some days we use it for the whole hour. So it kind of depends on what we're doing. But we were scheduling and stuff, if I don't occupy the room every day for that session, I don't get it when I want it. So sometimes it's not the best room to be working in, but some of the things I do, I can't do without it. So I go that direction. Of course, we have that luxury here that we don't always have every place, I realize. Now, usually when I do the things that are computer-oriented, I usually start out with them small. We'll start with some kind of an activity, and we're going to go through an activity like that in just a moment. But we'll start on a very small basis, like one person's data, their own, or a small sample. Then we'll do a little bit bigger situation. Then we'll do a little bit bigger situation, and then eventually we'll turn the thing over to the computer and do a simulation with a huge number. Howie, I don't think either of those, is that Minitab showing there? Minitab session window, either of them? I don't think either of those are behaving themselves. I think that one there is okay, I just don't think Minitab has been booted. That one's got Minitab showing back there by Dan. Okay, those were all working this morning, so I think those are all safe. That one I'm not sure about because I just turned that one on. Let's see, where was I?
Home data.
For example, if you were going to simulate the central limit theorem, and you started out by the first step, generating 100 samples of size 5, you've lost them already. Okay, because by the time you generate 100 samples all at the same time, a size 10 or something like that, and you calculate 100 means all at once, they're totally gone. So basically, start small with one sample. Do everything with one sample. Then put several samples together and build it so it's layered. And usually that way they can follow. Then anything we don't get done in class is their homework assignment. And their homework assignment is whatever is to follow up from that, and then it becomes a written report. So for example, the 3 lessons that you've picked up are the 3 lessons for my 3 sessions. If you had been here this morning in session 1, you would have done the pink one. You're here this one, and so you're going to do the green one. If you were here the 3rd one tomorrow morning, you'd do the blue one. So I'm giving everybody a copy of all 3 of them, so you can see what it is you missed by not having a different color assignment, which wasn't much. It's just a different approach, a different level problem, a different combination of the ways I've used it. This morning we did everything with simulation. Today this afternoon we're going to work with more of a regression situation. So that we're going to start this afternoon by going through a series of questions. And in fact, we're not going to even get into formulas. We're not going to talk about calculating R very much. We will refer to it, we'll talk a little bit about it. The assumption is they probably have done a homework assignment about R, so they've learned a little about it. So we'll cross-reference to it a lot, but we're really not going to do an awful lot with calculating it. We'll let Minicam calculate some for us for discussion purposes. But the idea here is what can you learn from data without formulas? What can you look at a set of data and learn and discover just by applying good common sense and information that you know about the system? So we're going to draw up a large set of data. It's a set of 101 students that Pat Kuby and I had last fall. We collected a bunch of information from them, and then we turned around and we used this data for a source of problems. We're going to start out by looking at the data, mostly looking at height and weight. They all live with height and weight. They all understand that. So hopefully when we get them to look at it on a scatter diagram and talk about its relationship, they can apply it. Then we're going to go to a second illustration, which is commuting. Now I don't know about your colleges, but our college is 100% commuters. So every student on campus has to commute. So every student understands the commuting problem. And so we're going to take a look at time and distance in some data, and some kind of strange things happen. Things that they don't even have an idea in the world are going to show up on the picture, the scatter diagram. They know about it. The job is to get them to dig deep enough in their own head to explain what they're seeing on that paper. And so this lesson is kind of a treatment to get them to the point where they can read scatter diagrams, they can relate what they know to the mathematical symbols. Now I'm assuming that you have basically the same kind of student I do, which is very minimal math experience. If we get those who have had 2 or 3 math courses, we are grateful. Okay, but for the most part, we get those who have struggled through intermediate algebra, and they really have difficulty with those kinds of mathematical concepts. And so that's what this lesson is written for, and this is how I would use the computer to try to teach them through it and get the computer to help them. Now, the thing that I do with an assignment like this, and I better pick up the green one because that's what you got. That's what we're doing in this session, is the green one. They have a copy of this. This is their sort of work copy in class. When the class is over, their assignment is to complete this and to write all the 25-word paragraphs and all the 50-word paragraphs that are in here. When they do that, this document is online. All they've got to do is go to the computer and pull it up in the word processor, and they have this document right in the word processor, and now they type in their final answers. So when they turn their paper in to me, a completed report, it comes off a word processor. I don't think any of my students ever took a penmanship class. I can't read handwritten papers. My old eyes just don't have enough imagination anymore for that. So everything that's turned into me, with the exception of our exams, comes off a word processor. So we start with an activity. Sometimes at the end we divide it up, and some part, this group will do a second assignment and a follow-up assignment. We split it up all kinds of ways to finish it. Sometimes there's written reports, sometimes there's oral reports. You can use it any combination of ways you want, but built in there, the computer is the workhorse to do the number crunching, to draw the pictures, to make things easier so they can spend their time thinking about what's going on and thinking about the concept. That's mostly what this particular lesson is. So what I'd like to do now is to basically just start it, okay? Basically, this is the assignment that you would come in. You would have been in my class for 5 or 6 lessons like this, so at this point, I would have expected you to be able to read the Minicam commands. What we'll do when we get to the Minicam, we will kind of do them together. So let's go through the first couple parts of this. I will let you have some time to start it. I probably will cut you off at a point and we will jump ahead to the Minicam part, simply because I don't think we need to go through all the written part, okay? But I would like you to start just to kind of, so we're all coming from the same location as we carry on this discussion, okay? Does everybody understand what I want you to do? So just start right where it says Part A, variables that measure people, and just start writing in the information just like you were a student in class. Write that information down. Let's do all of the first page. Get started on the second page, and then we'll see how it's going, how long it's taking you to do that, and then I'll see where I want you to jump to. see variables change between certain varieties, certain ranges of values, okay? Skip over to the top of the second page, question 2G. And talk about people of all ages. Now, the idea, in my estimation, age is like a confounding variable when you talk about height and weight. Why? If you talk about all people and you were to study a scatter diagram of heights and weights of people of all ages, what would you expect? What would you expect the graph to look like? It would be a big, long, stretched out thing, because you would have heights that went from basically, what, 20 inches to 7 foot, assuming we got some big basketball players or something, okay? We'd have weights that went from 10 pounds to 200 or 300 pounds, okay? So we'd have a huge, and we'd have a long scattered out path, and it would be a big plot, wouldn't it? Now, if we go to if we just take the age out and now go to college students, what happens? Well, they're all over 20. What's happened? They quit growing. Now, height and weight becomes a subset of that previous pattern, and it has a little bit different relationships, doesn't it?
Yes.
And then the next step, of course, would be to change it to males and females kinds of things. So we try to look at it in pieces and to try to get a feeling for it, okay? Let's look at some data now. Let's go down to number 3J and look at some actual data. So now we need Minicam. Now, these are all point-and-click instructions. I don't know how familiar you are with Minicam, but if what you're familiar with basically is any word processor that's on Windows, that's all you need to know. Okay? I'll talk you through the first couple. If on 3J, the first thing you do is you go to the file, the menu bar across the top, and find the word file and click on it. You get a pull down, and the arrow here says then, or followed by, you click on open worksheet, the second one down. Now, the set of data I want you to pull up is on M drive. You should, in just a second, get a open worksheet dialog window.
Today, disk, you need this one?
You don't need a disk.
Well, this one says you do.
Oh, if you're just signing on, click on the bottom bar that says continue without a disk. And yes, it'll tell you if you're in danger or something, but you're not.
Too late, it's scanning.
Yeah, if you put your disk in first, what it's going to do, because of the virus scan on it, it's going to scan everything, and it's going to tie you up for a while. Okay? So anyhow, on M, you go to the lower right-hand corner, and you click on, scroll down rather, and get to the M drive. You find M drive all right? Right above it, you need to click on courses. Actually, it's a double click on the word courses. Then you have, it's right here on your sheet, okay, courses. And then you have to scroll down and find math. You gotta get M drive first. M is right at the bottom. You're gonna click on M. Not on the elevator, but on the floor. Okay? And now once you double click on math, you got double click on math. It doesn't say math up there by courses yet. It didn't take the double. There you go. And then find the abbreviation for conference. I think all it's missing is the E, no, it's CE at the end. And then when conference comes up, you should over in the left-hand side find a list of files. One of those files is called class data. Obviously abbreviated a little bit. Double click on it, and Minicam should open you a set of data. If you want to see the data, point and click anywhere on the data window. Doesn't matter what cell, what number, just click on any data window. up on your keyboard, sort of to the right-hand side near the top, find the key that says END, E-N-D. Press it and it will go to the bottom of the data worksheet and you'll see how much data is there. I think you'll find there's 101 data there.
Where do we go after that?
Conference, class data. No, you don't have to type any data, it's already at the bottom. See it? That's why it's not highlighted. The highlighted things are things that are in bold, I should say. Those are the things you have to do. Like in this case, Minicam, it should be there automatically. Okay?
This one? No, next.
Let's go out over here. Oh, you're all set? You find it? Okay, class data is right in the middle there.
Click on this.
Let's make sure everybody's got their data, and we'll, so we can stay together. Conference is right under there. Check the one out, right there. Double click. And then over here, the middle one, is class data.
I changed mine, so I didn't want to do that.
I think it was two, there it goes. Dale? Oh, I thought you said something. Everybody got it? Okay? All right. I'm going to recommend, if you want to, you may, but the way these were working earlier this morning, I guess I'm going to recommend that we don't print. If you really want to print a copy, you can try printing it, but it should be able to print, but the system was awfully slow this morning. Everybody have their data? Are we ready? Okay, so now up at the, we want to draw a scatter diagram. So go up to graph, click on graph, followed by plot, and up will come a dialog window for the plot command. Enter for Y, C5. Now the best way to enter, don't type, listen first. You click and press select at the bottom, or you double click on the name over on the left, in that little left-hand window. It lists the columns and what they are. Now the reason I say that, Minicam has, this is where Minicam has a funny little quirk. There are some of the commands, if you type, like you go to type C5 in, or type in the word weight or height, it takes it fine. But there are some commands you have to put a single quote on them, or you'll get an error message. And for all the years I've been using Minicam, I cannot figure out what the routine is. So the only safe way is to enter it with point and clicks. It always does it the right way. So that's why I suggest that, okay? Plus it's easy, you don't have to type typo errors in. Okay, as soon as you've entered Y, click on under the X and enter the height, or you can use the tab key to go to the next one. Beg your pardon? Okay, you can either click or use tab to go to the next entry. Now the next thing on your paper I've got you to do is to go down to the bottom of that dialog window and select, or point and click on Annotations, the little button beside Annotations, select Title, and you can type a title in there. So type in the title. Let's say I suggested college students. If you want to put your name on it because you're going to print it, after you've done, you could put your name as a second line of title, so it would become like a subtitle. Or you could go back to Annotations and put in a footnote. If you don't plan to print it, don't worry about it. We'll just leave that step out. So once you're done here, click on OK. And that'll take you back to the main plot dialog window. Click OK a second time, and it should then draw us a graph. Unfortunately, it's like going to the bank. A whole bunch of us are getting in line at one time. So it's going to take a couple seconds.
Can you not view the graph?
Beg your pardon?
Can you not just view the graph?
I don't know what you mean.
View it on the screen?
Yeah, that's what I said. So we're not going to print it.
Yeah, sorry.
I said if you were going to print it, I want you to put your name on it so you knew which one of yours was from all. So that was an option. You don't have to print it. Now, I don't know why you're getting all hands all crazy or something's going on. Oh, you just got to wait. It takes a while. As soon as you see a red line of information by the Minitab prompt, it's working. If you got an hourglass or I'll call it the iron cross, just be patient. These computers are a little slow. They're driven by a little chipmunk that didn't have much lunch. So I thought we were going to get to use our new computer class upstairs, which has got Pentiums in, but that system is crashing on a daily basis, and I didn't want anything to do with it. Yours is done, okay? There comes Lori's. Okay, so at this point, we would try to get them to do some discussion and talk about some different points on here and what it means. I'm going to call up at this point a graph that I've already drawn. Maybe it's on your, let me look and see, maybe it's on your, oh, it's on yours already. Okay, so there's some questions here about it. I try to get them to answer at this point. Turn the page, and I give them a scatter diagram that now it's already. Again, now remember, I'm trying to get them to relate to what's in there so they can relate this picture, these number values, to what they see and talk about in real life. So what's the question I ask them here? Isn't it something like, describe the people who are represented by the dots above the top line, describe the people that they would say are represented by the points below the line? How would you describe those people?
Tall, fat, short, skinny.
Which one? Which way?
Well, depending on
Which one's which? The ones above the line are going to be overweight. The ones to the left end are going to be shorter and overweight. The ones to the right are going to be taller and overweight. The people below the bottom, below line B, are going to be underweight. The ones to the left are the shorter ones. I want them to get real here about this, okay? This is the thing I find they can't do. All right? And this is what I call without the formula. This is common sense. To you and me, it's common sense because we know how to quantify things. People who aren't good at mathematics, that's their trouble. They don't understand when I change you to a number 180, it's gone. Okay? And that's what a lot of this lesson is about, and I'm trying to use the computer to try to reinforce and make it maybe a little less painful, shall we say? Okay? All right, now what I want us to do now, this is just more of this particular one. The next set of data to me is a whole lot more interesting, so I want to jump forward to part B. Okay? You can read the rest of part A and stuff in that lesson. I want to talk about part B because this is the one that kind of gets them excited. Question, no, part B. It's clear over to page 6. This one's called commuting to college. This is the second part of the set of data here. And in my class, every time I've done this problem with them, it immediately is turned into what I class here, the highway battle of the sexes. Because as soon as you start talking about commuting back and forth to school, and you start talking about time and distance, have any of you used this problem before in class? The first thing 2 or 3 guys will say is, we're better drivers, we get there faster. Okay. Go ahead and do part 7A and B. And C if you want. So basically, I just tell them, okay, guys, which part of this graph is going to be you if you're the faster ones? And where are they? Where should all the males be if, in fact, their claim is true? They should be the bottom half, all the way up through, depending on their distance, shouldn't they? Okay, and of course, as a comment here, and this is a typical comment that comes back from at least one of the females in the class, is, hey, there's no difference. We drive just as fast as you do. And of course, I usually make a goofy comment. Yeah, the only women that pass me coming down the express, the only cars that pass me on the expressway are young women. So, I just add a little fuel to it, and now we got to go. Okay, so I take their claim. Their claim is, hey, there's no difference whether it's male or female. All right, if that's the case, what should happen when we look at this graph? If we knew, they'll be just totally intermixed everywhere, right? Is that what you would expect? What do you think? You're all experts. You're all teachers of statistics. You aren't that student in my class who has never seen data on a scatter diagram? What do you think? Do I get you to commit right now? What do you think? What do you think's going to happen here? Get in your mind, which, because it ain't going to happen, folks. Okay? Okay, so we've been talking about speed. So now I want them to begin to analyze some of the things they see on here. So again, playing off from something they're already talking about is speed. So I've given them the 60-mile-an-hour line. Explain. Laura, you want to pop up, let's see, what graph is it? It's time distance 3. It's on the disk. Is my little disk in there?
No.
No. Here it is. This is why it's not in there. It's in my briefcase still. I'm going to have Lori put up on the screen the same graph that you've got there for D, except that it's got some editing done on it to identify a point I want to talk about. The point I want to talk about, for example, has the coordinates 2015. Okay? I was supposed to have a question mark on it or something, I thought. Okay? And don't I ask them here somewhere to give me a scenario as to why, or to explain that point? Do I ask a question there about that point?
7E? No.
Yeah, that point in 7E. State 2 scenarios that could explain the existence of this point. It's 8. Somebody give me a rationale as to what that point 2015 represents. Let's assume for a minute
80 miles an hour.
that means they came 20 miles in 15 minutes. Now a mile a minute is 60. This is a mile and a third a minute. I think that's 80 miles an hour average. Let's see, if they started and they had to drive that last half mile from the end of the expressway in, I think they were driving 90 miles an hour down the expressway. Well, that's possible. Likely? Okay, so what other explanation is there for this point? It's a lie. It's not accurate data. Well, this data was collected the first day of class. We passed a sheet of paper around, everybody had a sheet of paper and they had to fill in this number. So it's all estimated data. So chances are this whole set of data is misrepresented a little bit. And how do people estimate? With whole numbers, multiples of 5, although this data was not bad. I was surprised by this set of data. Okay, so, but they tend to underestimate their time and so on. So, okay, so which scenario would you tend to believe? Is it more likely to be bad data, or is it more likely that they drove 90 miles an hour to get here in the morning or in the afternoon? Well, okay, so again, we got them talking about and trying to interpret what's here. Okay?
What about the story of the 10 and the 16?
Beg your pardon?
I said about the ones, the 10 and the 6. I have the graph up on my screen.
Okay. Now, which one you're pulling up, Laura?
Time.
Oh, okay.
Distance 3.
Time 3. Okay, there's time 3. Now here's the data with male and female showing. If you went ahead and popped it up, I think it tells you there somewhere is how to pop it up. You can you go in and you go back to graph and plot if you want to do it on your own computer to see how it works, and you enter. You want to do it with them, Lori, again? Just go to graph. No, don't do anything to that. Just do them again, right on top of it. Go to graph. Come on, Mousy, behave. Then plot. And down in the middle, down in this middle box where it says data display, you click on this button next to for each. And you select group. You want to separate the data by groups, and then you got to tell it where the group variable is. So you click on group variable, no, not the scroll, group variable, and then you click on gender, double click on gender, and now run okay, and it will run the data and it'll show you the two different genders. Okay? Now, once that comes up again, because it's going to come up again, hit the maximize button and blow it up so it's a little easier to see. Okay? Upper right-hand corner, the arrow that points up. No, on the graph, in the graph window. Okay? Oh, we got height and weight. Okay, just hit the double arrow, the bottom double arrow. Yep. Okay, hit the top of the second graph, the time distance one. No, time distance, yeah, right there. Okay. Now, take a look at this. You said you thought they were all the same, right? Now take a look. Notice that all the red circles, which is gender number 1, which happens to be the males, all the red circles are below the 30-minute line. All the red circles are to the left of the 20-mile line. Now what does that mean? Well, that means that apparently all the males in this sample do what? They drive less than, and they drive for less than, and yet the females drive the whole distance. They drive up. The pattern of the red circles and the basic pattern of the blue crosses look about the same. It's just that the blue pluses are stretched out longer. So who drives faster? What effect does speed of driving have on here? Speed would be, which way would the pattern move if you drove slower? Time would get longer, wouldn't it? If they drive faster, it's going to move down, okay? The pattern is pretty close to the same extended pattern, so I don't think there's an awful lot of difference in who drives faster. So let's get that out of our mind, okay? So now, what's going on? Something's going on here that's different about males and females other than the obvious that they're males and females, okay? What's different?
The male lives shorter distance.
Notice we also have a couple that are quite different than the others. Why? Dig into what you know about 19 and 20-year-olds for the most part, which is what most of these are. What's different about male and female students that could cause all those things to happen?
Male students live as room.
They cycle.
I want to tell you something, because I don't want you to think I thought of this. I wrestled with this damn question for weeks. I had a lady in my class last fall who claimed she was absolutely a non-math person, but that she was a great people person. She was in my office one day for some extra help on some other things, and we got talking about this problem, and she told me what the solution was. This lady was about 45, 50 years old, so she's, a little older than the typical college student. But she told me what she thought this was, and I think she's absolutely right. I want to see if you would, come on, talk about it. What do you think it is? What's different about males? If you've heard me tell somebody before, I don't want to hear you talking.
Could it possibly be that more of females will live at home than males?
Go ahead.
And therefore, if the males are living in apartments, they probably have apartments that are reasonably close to campus.
Okay, males, this is usually a first kind of a comment. Males have moved in. Males are too damn lazy to drive, a girl will say, okay? So the males move in. Well, why don't the females move in then? They have the same opportunity to move in, don't they?
They're not involved in sports. Sports could be a thing.
It's more fundamental than that.
Their husbands live part of the house.
Husbands. They're all unmarried.
Is there your students all unmarried?
Parents.
I'm exaggerating.
Is red female again? I'm sorry.
Red is male. Red circles are male. Blue plus signs are females.
The males are living in the females are. The male and
How many of your students have children?
While they dropped off the kids.
How many of the young ladies in your classes have kids? How many? Give me a percent.
40%.
15%, 40%. It has gotten to a point where I would dare say, my experience is it's somewhere between 25 and 30% is what I've been known to quote. It's my belief that the female co-ed population that have children. Okay? Now, if that happens to be the case, why don't these females move in?
They're probably already in, but taking the kids to daycare and traveling around getting here.
Oh, no. Why don't these females move? These people drive in at the same speed that these males. Males don't usually raise children when they're single, do they? The female raises the children when they're single, don't they? So why didn't these females move in? Our guess is they have children, and why did they stay home?
Mom's taking care of it.
No. Who's daycare? Mama? Auntie next door? Grandma around the block? They have a network at home, don't they? And if they moved in so they only had half as far to drive, they'd have to pay rent, and they would lose their network, wouldn't they? Their support. Okay? Turns out several of these were exactly that story. Okay, now explain this one. Explain these three.
Cyclists.
I think you just said it. One of you just said it over here. What did you say over there about?
They're cyclists. They
No, they're all car. They're all driving a car.
Take the children to babysitters.
These three gals are dropping their kids off to babysitters. They only live 3, 4, 5 miles away. But how long does it take to drop a baby off a babysitter? 15 minutes are wasted no matter what. Even if they're exactly en route, it takes 15 minutes to leave Junior off with a babysitter, doesn't it? Okay? So these people are what? Single moms dropping babies at babysitters, and the babysitter is basically not too far from being en route to school. What about this gal up here?
This is her home to lunch.
She lives here, the college is here, and where's the babysitter? Over there. She's going past the college and coming back kind of thing maybe, right? Make sense? I don't know whether that's the case or not. I didn't chase that one down. But it certainly fits the scenario. So now what have we done to this thing? We have dug into it, and we've dug at it, and we've dug at it. Have we uncovered any profound information? But we've just tried to make them look at and understand what life looks like when it's put into numbers, quantified, and put up the picture mathematically, right? I think that's what David Moore was saying this morning, that that's almost more important than the damn formulas. Okay? Let Minicam do the number crunching. Let your calculator do the number crunching. Yes, you have to know which one to use when. Once you've got it, you got to know that it's working, that it's the right one, you're using it properly. Yes, all those things have to take place. But if we want our students to understand, have any chance of understanding that stuff, we got to spend time doing this kind of thing. And I find the most productive way to do this is to do this kind of thing where I can give them a bunch of leading questions and get them to do a variable where it's fairly easy. Height and weight is fairly easy. There's not too much complication you can throw in there. But this one throws them a twister. This is that major league pitcher with a hard fastball. Okay, a hard curve fastball. Okay? And all of a sudden there's a twist in there that you didn't expect to see. I don't think any of you expected to see that pattern, did you? Would you have ever guessed in your wildest dream that that's what that scatter diagram, but yet you all know that you have students with all that fit that whole scenario, right? Now I'm not sure that that's the proper explanation of all that, but I'll tell you, it seems to fit absolutely every wrinkle that's in that scatter plot and make reasonable sense. Now, so you're talking like this to the class and you say, okay, so this is our conjecture. That's great. Where do we lead them from here? Kid says, well, how do I know that's the truth? Can you say, well, because I saw it in this diagram, I developed this theory, because I see it in this set of data, that's it? What do you convince them of? What do you convince them they have to do at this point? If this is our theory that female students drive this extended pattern because they stay home for family support with children and so on, if that's our contention, how would we go about demonstrating that contention has any validity to it? We'd have to go to some more data. We can't use this data to prove that contention. We have to design an experiment, go out and collect some new data, and see if this phenomenon happens again. So now you've introduced a whole realm of understanding statistics that I think the medical profession and some of these things that we hear on the news some of these statistics that make the news all the time have forgotten about. What was the one my wife said she read the other day? Rye bread. It was in the newspaper 2 days ago. I think it was one of the Scandinavian countries. I want to say it was Norway or Sweden. Somebody just came out with a report that shows that this I'll call it culture, this large group of people in a country, they eat more rye bread than anything else, and they have experienced that in this group they have less cancer, I'll say. I don't remember what the disease was now. But because they had eat all this extra rye bread, therefore they get less cancer. I can just see the rye bread producers of the world and their stock going up with the stock market now, can't you? I mean, and now you've got some way for them to begin to put that kind of statistical information that's in the news. They've got some basis to analyze it and kind of some questions to ask about it so they can decide whether that is garbage or whether that's meaningful or even stands a chance to be meaningful. I didn't read it. I don't know any of the details other than my wife just read it, and she related that much of it to me. So I have no idea whether it's good research or bad research in that case. But we see so much of it in the news all the time. But here's the foundation for a whole discussion. Again, no formulas. It's common sense to, I think, you and me. But they don't have experience enough to call that common sense. And so we have to practice that, I guess. But that's one of the ways I use the computer without doing a lot. This kind of a lesson, if I did this as a lesson in class, this would be one of those days where they sat at the computer the whole hour. They probably used the computer 10 minutes of that. They answered a bunch of questions. They wrote notes for paragraphs. Then after class, they probably used the computer for another hour to finish it up. Okay? But now to me, that's how you can get to use it as an aid. Obviously, David Moore showed you some things this morning that were far more sophisticated than this, far more clever. But there's a big difference between what he was showing you and what Minicam does, of course. The other group asked me this morning, you know, which is the best system to use, and I don't think there is an answer to that. I don't think most of the students I have would respond well to the software that David was showing us this morning, because I think it's pretty sophisticated. I think they would tell me sort of like, it's like when they come to me and say, I don't know enough about it to ask you a question yet. I don't think they have enough basic understanding to have the power of that system work for them. I guess that's why I like Minicam. I think Minicam is fairly easy to use. It's very, what do I want to call it? I call it job-oriented. You want the mean? Tell it you want the mean and it'll give you the mean. You want the standard deviation? Tell it and it'll give it to you. It's that kind of a system. It's not intended, and I don't think it was ever intended, to be used to do and demonstrate the things that David Moore was showing us with that system he had on the screen this morning. But obviously there's a point to both.
They're different products.
Oh, totally different products. Totally different products. Totally different features. I think a student who is a serious student who has some math background, has some understanding for taking things and quantifying and putting them in numbers, expressing them algebraically, I think they're going to love the system he's talking about. But the student that comes to years in my class that has never successfully completed an intermediate algebra class is not going to understand concepts enough to make that system work for them, and they're just going to be totally frustrated from it, I think. But I don't know.
If you're referring to the ACCESS package?
Yes.
Well, wouldn't that be more like this alternate delivery idea where you send lots of the math learning center? I'm not really sure, but it looks like it's sort of more like a textbook. Tutorial.
Yeah.
Minicam, like, there's no real direction, it's just a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. Like I said, you want something, you say Minitab, give me the mean. There it is. You want a histogram? There it is. It doesn't tell you whether whether it's the right tool to use or any of that stuff. Some of the other systems do some of that. Jump In, for example, that you can experiment. It's on here. You have to first of all identify the variable as to whether it's nominal or ordinal or continuous. And if you don't tell it the correct thing, and that's compatible with what you want, if you want a histogram and you have the data listed as nominal, you'll never get a histogram. It just won't let you. You've got to assign the variable the right the model. It has to be assigned the right modeling in order to do the operation, which is very important. But in that case, Jump In SAS is doing some of the things for you, and it's controlling some of them. But there again, I think that's for somebody who has a little experience. You don't start out with this non-math person with it, I don't think. Anyhow, how are we doing time-wise, Lori? I'm probably 20 minutes over.
Now for
Questions?
This is your, obviously, your computer lab. How many?
No, this is not a computer lab. This is a computer classroom. This classroom is used by anybody on campus, any department on campus who can get their name on the list early enough and get their courses in here if they want to.
Okay, so do you hold your staff class in here?
My classes meet right here. I teach in this classroom on a regular basis.
You may have said this.
I did that at the beginning, yeah.
I heard you say that not every day, or you don't use it every day or something?
Well, we come in here every day. On 3 days, if I say I have a class that's meeting 1 hour a day, 3 days a week, and we meet in here. Of those 3 days, probably there'll be one day I'm talking the average situation now, there'll probably be on the average 1 day a week that we won't even use them. There'll be 1 day a week that we'll use it almost all period, and there'll be 1 day a week that we'll probably use it half the period or less. But you can't get scheduled into a classroom around here that has computers unless you basically lock it up for the whole semester for your time block. And for example, let's say Lori was teaching a Stat 1 class and I was teaching a Stat 1 class, and we each wanted to use it half of the time. That would mean our schedules would have to be scheduled in the same time phase, and that couldn't happen because her class might be at 10 and mine might be at 8 o'clock or something, and so we couldn't split the room. So it becomes very difficult to schedule it other than that way. So in a way it becomes wasted time, but that's the only way you can get it.
What does that cost it then to your program?
How much is what?
How does it cost it, how does the cost of your program calculated?
I don't worry about that. I don't know.
Some of us do, and that's why.
I have no idea. I cannot answer that. I don't think we're structured around here that we have that. I don't think we
Because this to me looks like an expensive lab. If I only
it
20
is.
students in here.
Well, it's got 24 stations.
24.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't all be here, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Who made the decision to build these classrooms?
What's the answer to that, H? Do you know? Who made the decision? I don't know who made the decision. We have this classroom and the run across the hall. They both came in on campus about 5 years ago, would you guess? Something like that, 4 or 5 years ago. And of course, 4 or 5 years ago, these were state of the art. I mean, these were the last things on the market at that point. Of course, the software is what's dogged them down, because the software has gone leaps and bounds in the last 4 years.
This is the only way to do it. We have a couple of computer classrooms on our campus because we teach computer classes, spreadsheets, database, word processing, and things like that. So what we do, and this is not the way to do it, believe me, is we schedule our classes every day. We're going to meet in a regular classroom, and probably one of the days we double book. We book the computer classroom, whenever we can have that 1 day a week. But it's monumental planning.
Yeah,
make what
because
you're
the
doing
computer
with
classroom
time.
is scheduled hourly then, right?
Yeah, but it's,
Yeah.
you know, to schedule what you're gonna do on the machine with what you're teaching in class and what's coming next and what you already did, it's a big project, it's not worth it.
This,
I mean, it's a big project.
this classroom is college-wide. There are computer classrooms around, essentially that are departmental territory, okay?
Are they funded out of departmental budget then?
No, we have math classrooms, math computer rooms.
Yeah, we just have a new math computer classroom upstairs. That's the one I mentioned earlier that we're still having a network problem with it, and it's crashing on a daily basis on us at the end of the algebra class. We were going to meet for this session in there, so we had some Pentiums to work on, but we didn't dare put the software on because of the problems we're having. But that is basically math first, and if we don't have math classes in there, then it's open to whoever wants to use it.
How many rooms like this do you have in the whole school?
Like this one? 6, 7.
What do you call the difference between a math classroom and a math lab?
A lab is, there's no classes held in the lab. A lab is just open for students to go in and do their homework in. We have a very large computer lab across the hall here, which has, I believe, somewhere between 75 and 100 computers in it, that's open all day long for students to just drop in and do homework for most things on campus. We have a math lab upstairs, a math department computer lab upstairs, which has approximately 30 Macs and 30 PCs in for students who are in math courses to do computer homework. When that's closed, they may come down here. But if they have statistics homework for me, they're supposed to go to the Math Learning Center first. If they come in on Saturday afternoon and it's closed, they may come down here, and Minitab will be available down here for them.
But in the math learning, in the computer center upstairs, you can schedule a class in there.
In our Math Learning Center, a teacher in the department can schedule that and block it out for an hour on occasion and go in there for their class. And so that's what a lot of us used to do for years until there was classrooms available, was we'd go in there and do, you know, twice a semester or something, and do, well, this is how you use it, kind of lessons, and then you'd assign it, and then the student was basically on their own for whatever their instructions were to use the computers.
See, we have 3 days of classes and then a 2-hour lab in the math lab.
Mm.
That's how all our classes are set up.
Now, we don't have any labs in our courses.
See, we don't-
And I don't imagine because of the political problem that we will ever
you know, all-
battle that one down and have that happen.
All of our classes are 3 to 2-hour labs.
Yeah.
And then it translates to another credit hour anyways.
Right, right. We've talked about adding a credit hour to do that. For 2 years, we experimented with a separate 1-hour course in Minitab where attached to a stat section, for example, last fall, I had 2 sections of statistics, Stat 1 course, and I had 2 sections of the Math 180, as we called it, and the students were in both, and so it became a 4-credit hour course. And basically, the 1 hour that we spent, we learned how to use it. We learned how to use the word processor and how to use the system and stuff. We did statistics while we were doing it, and then in class, I could spend my time doing statistics. I didn't have to spend time doing
We're
it.
3 and 2 for 4-hour credit.
Yeah.
That's how all of our
Yeah.
classes are.
And so it's all kinds of combinations you find around.
All your math classes, or does it? All?
Everything, calculus, all the way down through.
It's 3-day classes and 2 hours of mathematical lab. Every class has a 2-hour lab.
That's an interesting program, isn't it? But we're there,
They're
right?
overtime.
Hmm?
Overtime.